ahead. Hello, everyone. Go ahead and take a seat. We'd love to get started. So we want to thank everybody for joining us in this last session of the day today. It's been a terrific day of wonderful talks, starting with Danielle Allen. I attended the student panel and the breakout session in here that was right before this. So we're happy to be here and honored to be among so many great voices. So today we're going to be talking about how to harness the power of truly inclusive and psychologically safe teams. And I'd like to start by introducing myself for those of you that don't know me. My name's Whitney Sweeney, and I'm a scientist in the Team Science Corps in ICTR. And for anyone that doesn't know what ICTR is, it's the Institute for Clinical and Translational Research. The mission of ICTR is to help guide research from bench to bedside, and then ultimately to community. So to help science reach the people we want to help much quicker. I've been on campus, I've been with the Team Science Corps for about 2 years, but I've been on campus for much, much longer. It's been terrific to see a number of friendly faces here today from positions I've held in the past, working with students. And so, yeah, we're just happy to be here. So I also wanted to introduce Dr. Alan Brazier. He's not with us in the presentation today, but to be fully inclusive, we want to call out all of our team members. He's the executive director for ICTR, and he is passionate about team science, and so he is also serving as the director for the Team Science Corps. At this point, I'd like to hand it over and let Patrick introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Patrick Kelly. I'm really delighted to be here, a bit daunted by the large room and knowing there's people online and whatnot. This is really exciting. Diversity work is a thread that runs throughout my entire life. I recall in high school, I helped lead our Alliance to End Homophobia. And I remember at the time being so interested in why the Human Rights Campaign, then the premier LGBT rights organization, defined itself as a human rights campaign, that I ended up going to graduate school to study the history and language of human rights, and I ended up writing a book about human rights advocacy. So I bring that longstanding interest in human rights work and diversity work to my current position as the research and program manager of the Team Science Corps. And it's in the Team Science Corps that Whitney and I seek to help interdisciplinary teams, in part by helping them become powerfully inclusive and psychologically safe, which are the topics we're going to be talking about today with you. So to tell you a little bit more about our team of the Team Science Corps, we aim to facilitate high-impact team science by developing infrastructure to support interdisciplinary teams. We advance this mission through the 4 pillars you can see listed on the slide. First, we design, deliver, and evaluate team science educational workshops for a variety of audiences, including graduate students, postdoctoral trainees, faculty, and staff. We also design, deliver, and evaluate evidence-based interventions in team science. For example, we'll tell you a little bit more about an intervention we developed called collaboration planning, which helps teams strategically launch by developing collaborative processes from the beginning. We also conduct research in our field. That little abbreviation, SCITS, stands for the science of team science. Whitney just yesterday actually published an article on a team science educational workshop series that she piloted here at UW for UW postdocs. And I'm really excited. I'm starting a qualitative study about how the leaders of science teams build and develop trust on their teams. Finally, we seek to foment and foster a culture of team science, both at our institution, ICTR, and across UW. For example, in December, we're hosting a 2-day transdisciplinary symposium on long COVID, which we're really excited about, as you can imagine. So we'd like to start today with this high-profile New York Times Magazine cover story entitled "What Google Learned from Its Quest to Build the Perfect Team." And this is a story about Google's Project Aristotle, a study at Google where they tried to find the secret sauce for what makes an ideal team. We start with the story because, as most people here know, teams are really the present and the future, right? The vast majority of modern work these days is conducted in teams. So the idea is, if really the teams are the fundamental unit of any organization, we need to study them in different contexts in order to understand how to maximize their effectiveness. And that's what the Google study set out to do. So they looked at over 180 teams. These teams ranged in size from 3 to 50 people, and then they conducted numerous interviews with these team members over the course of 2 years. And they came up with 5 key factors for team effectiveness. The 5th most important factor was impact, when team members think their work matters and creates change. The 4th most important factor was meaning, when work is personally important to team members. Simon Sinek has a saying that working hard for something we don't care about, that's what stress is. But working hard for something we love, that's what passion is. The 3rd most important factor was structure and clarity. It's important that team members have a clear sense of their role, the plans for the team, and the goals for the team. The 2nd most important factor was dependability, when team members get things done on time and meet Google's high bar for excellence. And the most important factor they found was psychological safety, when team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. So really, we start with the study because it really helps reinforce perhaps the fundamental point we want you to leave with today. Powerful teams are psychologically safe. Now, I think there are some criticisms you could level against the Google study. Your sample size of Google employees is not exactly representative of your average team. The study itself really downplays the individual role of personalities, and it doesn't talk about leadership, which is a really crucial component to any high-functioning team that we're going to talk more about with you today. But we start with the study because it's pretty fascinating that some of our most successful organizations are increasingly recognizing and drawing attention to the value of psychological safety. As one Google engineer on a high-functioning team told his Project Aristotle researchers, his team leader was direct and straightforward, which creates a safe space for you to take risks. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about psychological safety, but we also wanted to share with you how Google's list of factors for team effectiveness parallels and diverges a bit from how we think about high-performing teams from the vantage point of our organization and the Team Science Core. So in this paper we published earlier this year, we highlighted the importance of 5 domains to high-functioning teams, the 5 domains listed on the left there. So team management, communication, collaborative problem-solving, affect, and leadership. Now you'll note the overlap with Google's list in terms of the importance of a shared vision, the necessity for clear roles and responsibilities, the importance of trust and psychological safety. But the 2 lists diverge in that we really emphasize communication as being crucial to high-functioning teams. And as I alluded to earlier, we're really interested in leadership as a concept, right? So few of us are ever trained into how to be good leaders, but it's so foundational to the success of any team, which is in part why Whitney and I are here today, to underscore and highlight the value of leadership, and especially inclusive leadership. Just another story that kind of level set and set the stage for us today. As Whitney and I were preparing for another presentation with a department in the School of Medicine, we sent them a survey, a kind of needs assessment, and asked them, what makes an effective team? And we were struck that they kind of proactively came back to us and brought up concepts that we're going to be talking about today. So to the question, what makes a team effective, the person in the blue bubble says, one with active listening, where the members made a conscious effort to hear their teammates' ideas and reflect before responding to them. Similarly, the person on the far right in the pink bubble says that an empowered team is a productive team, one that includes varying perspectives and backgrounds in decision-making. The other 2 comments kind of echo these sentiments, and we found them just really kind of encouraging and delightful because without any prompting, without any priming on our part about the value of psychological safety and inclusivity, they came to us and told us that this is what they look for on an effective team. So it's another way of saying that these concepts that we're talking about today are very much on the minds of your future collaborators, right? We all want to work in environments that are inclusive and psychologically safe. It's a very popular concept, psychological safety, but we think it's important to state clearly, our first key message, that powerful teams are psychologically safe. But what is psychological safety? And where does the idea come from? As many people here probably know, it was popularized by Amy Edmondson from Harvard Business School in her book, The Fearless Organization, where she defines it as the belief that the work environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. Psychological safety is present when colleagues trust and respect each other and feel able, even obligated, to be candid. On psychologically safe team cultures, everyone feels comfortable expressing themselves, sharing questions, concerns, and mistakes without fear of embarrassment or that they will be humiliated, ignored, or blamed. In the jargon of our field, the science of team science, we call psychological safety a team emergent phenomenon, in that it's nurtured by every team member. So whereas trust is typically a one-on-one relationship, psychological safety is a function of everyone working together to create the right kind of dynamic and culture on a team. And although the tone is often set by a leader, the practice, as this quote indicates, really has to be co-created and continuously nurtured in order to be effective.
So what we know is that psychological safety is important to teams. Patrick's made that clear. And we know this because it also has an impact on the teams. So in a recent review article by Edmondson and Bransby, they looked over the last 10 years or so of the literature about psychological safety, and they identified 4 main things that psychological safety, how it impacts a team. The first is that basically it helps you get things done. It unlocks individual performance, it helps overcome barriers to teamwork, and overall enhances team performance. We also know that psychologically safe environments foster learning and innovation. They create opportunities for candid communication, experimentation, and it ultimately fosters creativity and innovation. We know that psychologically safe environments are those environments that we all want to work in. It improves our work experience. It allows for us to have authentic engagement. It makes it easier to cope with stress and strain, and it creates an inclusive environment. And then, of course, psychological safety is ultimately inextricably linked with leadership, with effective leadership. It promotes better listening, so better leaders are better listeners. And it's also related to transparency and competence of the leader. So how do we measure psychological safety? How do we know when our teams are, in fact, psychologically safe? So Amy Edmondson, in the original 2018 book, created this survey, if you will, this assessment, this team assessment, to determine how psychologically safe a team was. And in the previous review, this is the most common measure that's used out there today. There's a couple of others that people use, but this is the one that's used most frequently. You'll notice there's 7 items. It's fairly simple. And what people do typically is they rate their team on each of these statements from strongly disagree, that's the SD, to strongly agree. So at this point, maybe take a moment and look through them. And then we're not actually going to ask you right now to assess your team. Instead, we're going to ask you to think about it in a slightly different way, just to get you processing and thinking about these ideas. So what we'd like to do is, we're going to switch this to a Slido poll in just a second. We want you to rank order the items. So if you, as soon as the QR code is available, if you could, there'd be an opportunity to rank order, there we go, the items in terms of importance, with the first being the most important and the 7th being the least important. So we'll take a few minutes, I'll give you a break, and we'll see what you say. people still thinking? Interesting. All right. I think most people have responded. I think there's a few more. Take 60 more seconds. Okay. We'll go ahead. I know that wasn't a whole 60 seconds. We did this activity primarily just to get you thinking about these different nuanced elements of psychological safety. So the bottom line is there isn't a right answer. Instead, it's interesting just to see what's at the top of your minds. And looking at the survey from the people who participated, interestingly, it looks like there's a lot of these things are equal. So the one that rose to the top was members of this team are able to bring up problems and tough issues. So that was clearly the most important. But if you look at the 2, 3, 4, 5, that those are not far behind. Mm-hmm. And that's not entirely surprising. I would argue that, and I think Patrick would agree, that ultimately all of these things are important for a team. And if you don't have all of these nuanced elements, then teams aren't necessarily going to function particularly well. I'm curious if anybody in the audience had a reaction to any of these. There's a couple of mics, if anybody wants to chime in about what you were thinking about when you were filling out the poll. Any brave souls? Oh, we have a brave soul.
I don't know if I'd go that far. But the thing that made this really challenging for me is you have half of them that were very positively cast, and then you had others that were very negatively cast.
Yeah.
Like it is difficult to ask. It almost felt like there was trying to rank things that are in two different piles.
Okay, that's fair.
Fair
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and sometimes in terms of survey creation, they do that just so that people attend to each question so they don't just go down, oh, these are all negative or these are all positive. It's part of a survey creation technique, and it's still a really important point. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Hi there.
Please.
Hi, I was just struck by thinking about the teams that I'm a part of. So I'm a part of multiple teams at the university, and so really thinking about what does psychological safety mean, and who are part of the spaces where I feel more psychological safety based on kind of these questions, and where I might feel a little less. So the people around me and the importance of those who I do my work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure a lot of you thought about the teams that you're currently working on.
And that's really wonderful. That's really the goal. It's really a tool to think about how psychologically safe your teams are. What are the kind of constituent components of psychological safety? Another thought there?
One more.
No, you're good.
No, come on.
The more the
I just
merrier.
wanted to say that number 4 was an odd one for me in that, like,
Okay.
once I read it and thought about it, it became, like, the most important one, in that, like, if that were the case, like, I would have no psychological safety on my team. But before I read it, it wouldn't even occur to me that that could be happening on my team.
Interesting.
So it's kind of like didn't exist, but was also the most important one, which I just thought was kind of an odd characteristic of that question for me.
Yeah, 4 is really linked to trust, right? Because if somebody's going to undermine you, that's an act of trust, breaking trust in a lot of ways. So that makes total sense and is a really nice observation.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and go on to another way to think about psychological safety is in terms of stages. And Timothy Clark in 2020 wrote a book called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. It starts with inclusion safety. Do I feel included? Do I feel like I belong on this team? The second is learning safety. Do I have an opportunity to experiment? Am I developing? Can I grow? The third is contributor safety. Does my work matter? And this goes back to that Google study and the second list that we had, which is it can actually be incredibly painful to be on a team, but to be prevented from contributing and engaging. You're just there as a placeholder. And then finally, challenger safety. Am I safe to challenge the status quo? And I always like to point this out at this particular stage in that we have to think about innovation. So challenger safety isn't just about, uh-oh, that piece of equipment is broken or we made a mistake. It's also about challenging how you currently do things. You can't have innovation without being willing to take a risk and put a new idea out there. So that challenger safety isn't just about alerts. It's about nuance and innovation. And interestingly, you'll notice that along these 4 stages of psychological safety, well, one is, if you think back to the survey you just completed, you'll notice that there's elements of these and those questions. You know, do I feel included? Are people undermining me? Am I able to experiment and learn? Does my work matter? Am I valued? And then at that very beginning, do you want me to drive? Sorry, making Patrick drive my slides. At the very beginning is that inclusion. That inclusion is the first. These all go sequentially in order. That inclusion is the most important. So the teams that we work with are diverse. It's part of what we do. We work with interdisciplinary teams, so our teams are diverse in terms of the disciplines that participate in them. We see that they're diverse in terms of career stage. As Patrick mentioned before, we have teams that have graduate students all the way to senior faculty. They have different professional roles. They might be industry partners, staff members, faculty, demographic diversity, of course, and then ways in which they think, personality type and work style. And what we know is that diverse teams are powerful teams. And what we're trying to go for ultimately is cognitive diversity on a team. Now, cognitive diversity refers to differences in perspectives or information processing styles. So basically how individuals engage with uncertain or complex situations. And what you'll notice by looking at this figure is that the diverse teams, if you look at the, hopefully it's your right-hand side as well, on the right-hand side, that the diverse teams significantly outperform those more homogeneous teams, that they're more productive, they're more innovative, they're better at solving problems. So the wonderful thing about the teams we work with is that they have a lot of cognitive diversity, they have a lot of different perspectives. One of the most challenging things about the teams that we work with is that they have a lot of different perspectives. And so you'll notice on what's my left-hand side of the graph, the one with the y-axis, is that there's a lag. And that it takes time, that you have to invest in your cognitively diverse teams. You have to take the time to, as LaTanya Wilkins would say, to lead below the surface, to get to know your team members, to understand where they're coming from, what they bring to the team. And when you do, your teams will be more powerful for it.
So another one of our key messages is that in order for teams to take advantage of their diversity, to kind of reap the benefits of cognitive diversity that Whitney was just talking about, it's important that all the members of the team feel a sense of belonging. And that's because, as stated here, there's a difference between the notion that the fact that a diverse workforce by itself doesn't ensure that everyone feels a sense of belonging at work. The latest research from our field, the science of team science, suggests that it could be psychological safety that helps leverage the power of diversity on teams. Amy Edmondson goes so far as to call it the missing ingredient that could make or break a diverse team's ability to put its different perspectives to good use. Now, scholars like Amy Edmondson are starting to test this link between DEIA and psychological safety in practice. She teamed up with the professor of organizational behavior, Henrik Bresman, to look at this relationship on over 60 drug development teams at 6 large pharmaceutical companies. And they found that when psychological safety was high, the red dots in the figure, performance was more positively associated with diversity. But when psychological safety was low, the gray dots in the figure, diversity was more negatively associated with performance. And their conclusion was that diverse teams without psychological safety often have communication challenges that impede their unrealized potential. So again, you'll see this other theme that we've been talking about, the importance of communication to highly functioning teams. So we have to acknowledge that inclusion doesn't inevitably follow from just having a diverse team. So we wanted to think about what are some practices that we can share with you that help foster psychological safety, that missing and vital ingredient that can help teams take advantage of their diversity. One is related to what we just talked about with communication, or really the first two are, and that's the value of transparently sharing information and motives. The second is related, and it's listening with attention, gratitude, and humility. The researchers in the Project Aristotle study at Google called this listening ostentatiously, which is a term I love. And that's really important so that all team members feel heard, but it's also linked to that kind of culture of being a challenger and an innovator that Whitney was just talking about. We want feedback to be embedded within how that team operates so people don't fear feedback, but they welcome feedback because it becomes it's the way through which they're adaptive, right? It's the way through which they improve and can grow from their past mistakes. A third practice is to reframe mistakes, speaking of mistakes. And reframing is a concept Whitney's going to talk about more in a little bit. And specifically, to reframe mistakes as opportunities for learning, not wholly negative outcomes, as I was just saying. Finally, it's really important that teams set boundaries and enforce accountability. It's really important that teams have clear and fair rules and that everyone knows that those rules, there will be violations or sanctions if people don't honor those rules. That helps kind of build psychological safety as well. So I mentioned that our Team Science Core had designed an intervention for teams called collaboration planning. And we've found that collaboration planning, in a lot of ways, embeds a lot of practices that help foster psychological safety on teams. During these 90-minute sessions, Whitney and I facilitated a discussion with an entire interdisciplinary team on the 7 thematic areas covered here. And we've really found that the collaboration planning sessions help us to proactively address the areas that most frequently cause conflict in teams. These are typically questions over authorship or credit, how a team's going to communicate, or kind of the nuts and bolts of how it's going to manage the project. We've also found that the kind of rich and open discussion with the entire team members themselves is an act that itself helps foster trust and psychological safety. If everyone feels like their input is valued as the team is making these kind of crucial and vital decisions as they're launching their project. So now that we've thrown a lot of content at you, we're interested, again, in kind of audience participation time. So we'd like you to think about what is one step you can take to promote psychological safety in your teams. And this, again, will be one where you can scan with the QR code, and as people do... Oh,
hang on. There we go.
There we go. And maybe we can get our nice interlude music to set the tone. This is my Slido music now. So it's good. So fun.
Yeah. Wow, this is some terrific stuff.
Yeah, this is really encouraging and lovely to read. This is in part we're collecting data, so please, we love to see this. So obviously active listening, transparency being the largest, but then, words that shouldn't surprise anyone: collaboration, openness, vulnerability, listening, intentionality, trust, bring humility to each interactions. Vulnerability, yeah. I love these.
Yeah. validate, active, open, intentional. You said all these. I'm just echoing. It's
Doesn't
exciting.
hurt. Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
And I love that active listening is right there front and center. As those of you that know how word clouds work, that the bigger and the darker the colors of the words, the more people have said. So the fact that active listening and transparency and vulnerability and validate are all bigger means that more of you are indicating that's something that you would like to do to help your teams be more psychologically safe. All right, this is awesome.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll keep going. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for your responses. So remember, our first message we want you to leave with today is that powerful teams are psychologically safe. Our second key message that we want you to leave with today is that powerful teams practice inclusive leadership. Now, inclusive leadership as a concept has been around for a long time, but it's received new attention in the past 5 years or so. Inclusive leadership directly seeks to ensure that everyone on a team feels like they are valued, like they're respected, like they belong on a team. And scholars are starting to kind of test what's the added benefit of inclusive leadership. And studies have shown that it enhances team performance across a number of metrics. These teams are 17% more likely to be high performing, 20% more likely to make high quality decisions, and 29% more likely to behave collaboratively. These same researchers surveyed the literature to come up with the 6 signature traits of an inclusive leader, which, in addition to their wonderful quality of being alliterative and starting with C, they also, as you can tell, really kind of resonate and overlap with concepts we've talked today. So curiosity, cultural intelligence, collaboration, commitment, cognizance, and courage, especially the courage of interpersonal risk-taking, which is a condition of psychological safety.
Okay. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to start talking more about inclusive leadership. And we're going to frame the rest of this section based on the inclusive leader continuum put forward by Jennifer Brown in her book on inclusive leadership. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Nicole Kaforsky from the School of Business. We gave a presentation very similar to this to their students, and she had shared that book with me. And I felt like it was a great way to capture some of the things, to reorganize and reframe some of the things that we want to share with you today. So just shout out to Nicole for sharing that wonderful book with me. So the inclusive leader continuum goes from being unaware, and the question you're asking yourself at this stage is, why does this matter to me? We often find people who aren't really sure, they're new to thinking about diversity and inclusion, they don't really understand why it's relevant to them. But as you spend some more time thinking about being inclusive, you start asking yourself, you become more aware, and you start asking yourself, what do I not yet see or understand? As our awareness grows, then we feel called to action. And in our case, because we work primarily with teams, we think about it in terms of, how can I promote inclusion on my team? But of course, teams are just part of the story, and teams fit within a system. And so we ultimately want to advocate and change the system. And so we ask, how can I broaden my influence? So let's start at the first stage, the unaware stage. Oh, before we do, I also want to say some of you have likely noticed that the continuum goes around and around in a circle. And that's to capture the idea that we're always constantly growing and developing and learning, that there's always something new, some new way to help somebody be included, and that cyclical nature sort of draws attention to that. So now we'll start with the stage, the unaware stage. Why does this matter to me? And to do that, we need to start thinking about our frame of reference. And if we think about our frame of reference is all of the experiences that we've had, everything that we've learned along the way, who we've interacted with, how we've been brought up. It influences how we see ourselves, it influences how we see other people, and it influences the actions that we take. Now, I was looking for a graphic for this, and I stumbled across this because, well, it's cats, so I love cats.
Does.
But I do. But in addition to this, I was struck by this picture for a number of different reasons. So you'll notice that there's the cute little cat at the top, and he's small and meek and cute. And you'll also notice he's looking in the puddle, and he's seeing himself as bigger than. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, well, our frame of reference, imagine if we're nurtured, if we're cared for, if we're safe. We can all see ourselves as being bigger than. We can grow and develop and imagine ourselves and imagine other people the best version of themselves. In this case, I guess this little kitten's a tiger. The other thing that struck me about this particular picture is the phrase, mindset is everything. And to be honest, it gave me pause because I was thinking, okay, I don't want to simply say it's mind over matter. It's not mind over matter. But again, going back to that idea that our frame of reference is our compilation of experiences, that our mindset does influence, again, how we see ourselves, others, and our actions. And it's also the product of our experiences. Now imagine, so this picture is supposed to help us imagine what it would be like to reframe something. And again, the third thing, I guess, if you will, that struck me about this is imagine, what if you're not safe? What if you're not cared for? What if you're not nurtured? What if you experience microaggressions, bullying? Then it takes the picture, all you have to do is flip it upside down. And when you flip it upside down, you take somebody who's fully capable and amazing and powerful, but they see themselves as small. And again, because this influences how you see yourself, how you see others, and the actions you take, it also makes you see others as less than. And so we really need, in that unaware state, to think about where am I coming from and how is it influencing my thoughts and my actions? And that's when we start realizing and becoming aware. What is it that I do not yet see, or what is it that I don't understand? And there's many levels of awareness. There's self-awareness, like the kitten, looking at himself. There's team awareness, the group dynamics on a team. And then there's system awareness. We're all part of a system. And we'll be touching on different aspects of each of these levels of awareness as we continue. When we think about awareness, we need to think about power or privilege. And we've heard some of the speakers today address this issue. Again, we work primarily with teams, so often we think of power differentials on our teams in terms of the PI or the principal investigator on the team, and maybe a graduate student or a postdoc. But there's many different ways, as we've all talked about today, we've heard about today, there's different ways to have power on a team. And that we all come with certain kinds of privilege. And I love the quote here, that privilege is not in and of itself bad. What matters is what we do with it. We have to share our resources and take direction about how to use our privilege in ways that empower those who lack it. So you shouldn't be ashamed if you have privilege, and you should take the opportunity to help other people on your team to be heard, to help them contribute. And I can even say, it's important for all of us to think about this. I have a certain amount of privilege when I'm on a team. I'm a white woman. I am relatively well educated. And sometimes that makes it so that I have more opportunities to speak out and contribute. And so just something to think about. We're not going to make you do a poll this time. But just something to think about. It's important for all of us to say, what privileges do I have? Did you want to?
Yeah, so similarly, I have a lot of privilege too. I'm a white male, also grew up in kind of a comfortable upper middle class family. I have an advanced degree, but I'm also gay, right? So a way I think I've used my privileges, I came out at a really early age, and when I came out at the age of 14, I told my dad, and I remember being really kind of nervous, obviously stressed out about telling your father you're gay, and he said, oh, I thought it was something important, you know? So like, the notion that I can come from a family where it wasn't a factor, to me, it was important to use my privilege and then be an advocate for LGBT youth when I was in high school and able to come out at an early age and it was safe, right? So that was just a good example of how I used my privilege.
On the other side, if you think of it like a continuum, we need to also consider intersectionality, and we've heard people talk about that today. And many of you likely know that the term intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, a lawyer who was advocating for African American women. And she realized that by trying to advocate for them, that it was becoming difficult because some of the problems they were having was because they were women and because they were African American. And so she coined this term intersectional because it had never been used before. And now it's used more broadly. To talk about the different layers of ourselves. I think I'm having source amnesia now, but somebody spoke about it really, really beautifully in one of the earlier sessions about the different, I think it was Abby in the student forum, who was talking about the different layers of yourself. And it's important to think about, just like thinking about privilege and the power you can share with other people, it's also important to be as aware of different people's intersectionality as you can. When we spoke to the business school, there was a student who asked me, like, what about intersectionality? Is that important? I feel like I didn't answer her question very well at the time. And what I would say is that we need to do the best we can, again, to lead below the surface and get to know our team members as best as we can. Everybody has different layers to them. And the more we can see for them, the less they have to tell us what they need. And this quote here, I like this quote as well. Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides and where it interlocks and intersects. So we need to know where we have power, and we need to know how to help based on everybody's needs. Another way to be aware, we've all heard about unconscious bias. Again, going back to LaTanya Wilkins, I think she listed that there were 70 different kinds of unconscious bias. So buckle up, we're gonna go through, no, I'm just kidding. No, we're just gonna go through the 3 most relevant. So the first here is affinity bias. We tend to gravitate towards people who are similar to us. That's normal, that's natural. We feel more comfortable with what we know. Again, not something that you should feel shame about, but when you spend your time on a team and you only sit next to the people who look like you, or you only talk to the people who look like you, or act like you, or think like you need to ask yourself, what is that doing to my team? Confirmation bias. We tend to seek out, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms our own beliefs. I like to joke, Patrick knows, I love it when science confirms my biases. So when I see different studies that tell me I can eat all the chocolate, drink all the wine and coffee I want, I'm thrilled. I know there's those other studies that say that they might not be as good for me, but no, I'm gonna go with the ones that confirm my biases. Now that's a joke. And I'm joking about food, but we do it with people too. We say, oh, those people, they're always like that. That group over there, they always do that. And we have to be careful to remember that although stereotypes are informative, that we leave out a lot of nuance about individual behavior. And then the third type is in-group bias. We tend to give preferential treatment to others who are in our in-group. And again, that goes with the affinity bias. And what we know is that awareness is the best defense against our unconscious bias. Asking ourselves questions, thinking about things. When you sit next to your friends at work, should you invite the person at the desk next to you? Maybe you should. And ask yourself, are you making decisions based on facts or feelings? We do know, Susan David would say that your feelings are in fact data, and you should listen to them. But data is something that needs to be carefully analyzed and interpreted. So again, if you're making your decisions based on what's comfortable for you, then you need to ask yourself, is that the decision I should be making at this time? Ultimately, our brains are pre-wired to impulsively gravitate towards what's familiar, making the unfamiliar or different outliers to our focus. To practice inclusivity, we must literally retrain our brains to resist the impulse so that we can explore the unfamiliar and embrace it alongside the familiar. It's habit. We gravitate towards what's comfortable. We have to rewire our brains. We have to think about it. It's hard, but we have to continue to practice to change the way we think in order to be more inclusive and ultimately create more psychologically safe environments. So we now ask ourselves, how can I promote inclusion on my team? And Rishika Tulshan talks about the inclusion mindset. She has an acronym. Don't we all love a great acronym? And in this case, it's called the BRIDGE acronym. And I like the BRIDGE acronym because I like to be, it calls up an image to me. It's maybe we meet on the bridge together. Maybe we sit on the bridge in the middle and dangle our feet over into the pond. Whatever you want to do with your own imagery is fine with me. The idea is that it's again, just another way to trigger thoughts. So the BRIDGE acronym is, when you're in situations, go ahead and be uncomfortable. Reflect on what you don't know. Invite feedback, be open. And don't get defensive. Defensiveness never helps. We've heard the talk that was just before us, and Danielle Allen talks about embracing the differences. leaning in, that affected you? Why did it affect you? Well, we have to be careful about why. I'm still working on my language. Tell me how it affected you. We grow from our mistakes and expect that change takes time. Again, we have to rewire our brains. And I like to tell a story that exemplifies this. It's from a friend of mine from work in a previous position. And I have to give the disclaimer that I'm going to tell you a story about two different cultures. Neither one of us is representative of any global culture, but the story is to exemplify the way two different people misunderstood each other and came around. So my friend happened to be Chinese, and her mom was visiting from China, and she invited my husband and my daughter and I over for dinner. They were making authentic Chinese food. We were super excited. So we come in, we hand them our bottle of wine, because, vice. And we sit down, and they're continuing to prepare the meal, as people do. And we're sitting there, and so, like I would normally think to do, my husband and I get up multiple times, we're like, what can we do to help? And we keep doing this, because this is what we do. And then finally, my friend came over, and she said, why do you keep doing that? And I said, doing what? She's like, you keep asking if you can help. And I said, because we're just sitting here. That's what we do. We feel bad if you're waiting on us. And she's like, well, when you do that, you're sending me the message that I'm not capable, that I don't know how to do this. And she shared with me that where they're coming from, that's not what you do. And so I had inadvertently, I happened to grow up in the Midwest. We're sort of I'm a fawning culture. We're always like, what can I do to help? And I'm sitting there feeling super uncomfortable for not offering to help. And so she just said, what are you doing? And I explained all of that to her. And then she's like, oh, okay, she explained all of that to me. And we had a delightful conversation about it. She wasn't actually mad, she was just confused. So she's like, essentially she was saying, tell me why you're doing that. Again, be careful with the whys, but tell me why you're doing it. What does that mean when you do that? And neither one of us got defensive. We leaned in, we had a delicious dinner. And I share this story just because I feel like these are the kinds of conversations we should be having on our teams and in our workplace. When you do that, it hurts me. That's ultimately what she was saying. When you offer to help, you're actually hurting me. And you're making me feel bad. And I said, oh, okay, thank you for telling me. So this is just an exemplar of the bridge where we were both uncomfortable. We reflected on what we didn't know. We were giving each other feedback. Neither one of us got defensive. And we recognized that we had a lot to learn about each other's cultures. So when you're harnessing the inclusion mindset, instead of thinking, so here we are, we're reframing your brain. I'm going to help you retrain. He doesn't know what he's doing. Try thinking instead, this is new to him. Maybe give him a break. I wasn't trained for this. Try thinking, how can I learn more? Getting past that imposter syndrome. Okay, maybe I just need a little more training. My team members don't do enough. That's the polite way of saying I have lazy team members. Maybe ask the question, how can we overcome our challenges as a team? They never contribute to meetings. This goes back to that privilege. Maybe instead saying, how can I find ways to draw them out? And then ultimately, what we want to do is go beyond our teams to broaden our influence. And so you've all seen this graphic, I'm sure. You've all seen this graphic in one way, shape, or form. And you see that there's equality. Everybody's given exactly the same amount. But at the end of the day, that doesn't solve the problem. The poor individuals on the right-hand side still can't see the soccer game. So then we shoot for equity, and we give people what they need. And that helps. It makes it so everybody can see the soccer game. And then we think about it in terms of justice. And I think about this in terms of creating a system where we don't need interventions, where those opportunities are available naturally as part of the system. And then it's important to think about the system, to come to that system awareness. So it's important to understand that our workplaces were not built by or for all kinds of identities, but rather for those who originally built the modern workplace and still dominate its leadership ranks. Our workplace was created originally not to be inclusive. Not everybody's created the system. And we won't truly have justice, and it won't be truly inclusive until those people are till everybody, I want to say it that way, till everybody's part of creation of the system. Another way to think of this is another metaphor. Patrick knows I love a good metaphor. So diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. And thinking about the justice or the equity is being asked to be on the planning committee, where you can be part of creating the values and the venue. Because maybe when you go to that party, maybe you don't like 80s music. Maybe you don't want to drink alcohol. Being able to create the system is one way to help advocate for everyone. There you go.
So one more didactic slide for you all. We wanted to leave you with some insights about inclusive leaders. This list here comes from a group of researchers who interviewed over 40 award-winning DEIA practitioners, and they came up with a number of consistent behaviors that promote inclusive leadership. So the first behavior here is they choose values over power. So kind of rather than present an image of an infallible or superior leader, these leaders talked about how they led with vulnerability and prioritized authentic interactions. They said that by sharing vulnerability, it really helped build trust and psychological safety with their team members. They also intentionally and consistently promote inclusion. They talk about inclusive efforts as needing to be actively learned and never passively acquired. And one way they go about kind of in pursuit of that active learning is by the third bullet point here, by challenging outdated policies. Inclusive leaders on this list talked about how, they take every opportunity to think about, is this policy antiquated? And how can we breathe new life into it? How can we make it more representative and inclusive of all of our employees? In that pursuit, as the fourth bullet point points out, they view leadership as everyone's responsibility, right? Not just the sole responsibility of a DEIA committee or an HR department. They talked about how the practice, like psychological safety, needs to be nurtured and promoted by everyone on the team. So, we'd like to end with another word cloud and ask you all, what is one action you can take to harness the power of inclusive teams?
I think this one's going to come in like chat form. Bias. Active listening is coming out again.
Shared leadership. We didn't talk about that, but also that's
Yeah.
a beautiful concept and very much interrelated.
Be
Welcoming
vulnerable.
ideas. Yeah.
Lots of vulnerability, intentionality, include people at all levels of decision making. Love that. Sharing what I learned here today with my team. Thank you. Remembering not to be defensive. Now you're going too fast. Stay curious. Advocating for others. Invite new perspectives. More active listening. Ensure everyone feels heard and included, taking advantage of learning opportunities. So I think we'll go ahead and let those keep rolling in, and so go ahead and enjoy the suggestions from your audience cohort here. And then at this point, we'd be happy to open up for questions. You can step up to the mic, if you will, and then we can take a peek. Not sure how the computer works, but we'll figure that out. Take a peek and see if people have questions from home, too. Here's one from home. They're calling in from home. Sorry, I'm old-time radio.
It's your cat.
What?
It's your cat.
It's my cat. No, the question, it's a tough one. I'm almost hesitant. So it's, how can we convince those multiple leadership levels above us to focus on psychological safety?
Ooh.
That was a hard one. Yes. You want to go first?
It's a huge question, right? I think in part, it's talking about it as we're doing here, right? And trying to promote it in multiple venues. And as members of teams, I guess, bringing to our superiors why we want to work on psychologically safe teams. A common misconception about psychological safety is that it's about building kind of warm and fuzzy cultures where everyone gets along, right? Kind of cultures of kumbaya. That's really not what psychological safety is about. What I hope that Whitney and I kind of underscored for you today is psychological safety is about building cultures of experimentation, cultures of constant learning, where trial and error is embraced, because those are the cultures that are psychologically safe that produce innovation, right? That produce new ideas. So I think if we go to our superiors with evidence that psychologically safe cultures make our teams more powerful and they're more rewarding, that's probably one approach to do it. But it's really hard, right? And in part because it's a relatively recent concept that's been promoted. It hasn't been around for 40, 50 years.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting to think about the different systems. You start on your team, and we typically work with individual teams, but making it concrete for those other additional layers. And giving them, what is it that you're asking them for? Okay, you want an opportunity to innovate. What does that mean to you? Making that a little more concrete for them can also be helpful as well. I know there was another question here that was also asking about organizational, how can we get leaders to understand the importance of this and take actions to build it at an organizational level? And again, talks like this and concrete asks can be very, very helpful. Go ahead.
I would also
please.
just add, I think the pandemic kind of helped us all reassess what we want out of work, right? And I think a lot of us had kind of a reckoning about what our work environment should be like, where concepts like inclusion and psychological safety have risen to the top and are now more important to us because we've gone through this traumatic global pandemic, if that makes sense. So I'm encouraged, at least, by kind of the flux of time, maybe you could say, that I think this is the type of environments we want to build, the type of work environments we want to build, and it's incumbent upon us as kind of participants in those of those environments to ask our leaders for more, right?
Hold that thought. Can you click back to the leadership continuum? There was a request to take notes on it. And then go ahead and ask your question.
Sure. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this question, but you did show a graph earlier. It was a line graph that showed time versus productivity based on diversity. I'd be curious to know if you can answer how much time that took for the more diverse group to outperform the more homogeneous one. And related to that, is there an impact of turnover on inclusive teams and productivity?
Mm-hmm. Wow, okay, you guys are really good at the questions. So that graphic was sort of a cartoonization. It was a compilation of a number of different studies. It wasn't one study that measured all of those things. So I can't tell you exactly how much time, so I'm sorry for that. In terms of turnover, absolutely turnover can be an impact to inclusion and psychological safety. One way to deal with that is to effectively and strategically plan your collaborations. So the more that you can promote cultural norms on your team and document those. So how do we communicate with each other? How do we treat each other? How quickly do we answer emails? Having those norms documented can help significantly in terms of when you bring somebody else in, making that clear, this is how we work as a team. And when we do collaboration planning with our teams, a lot of the teams are very high functioning. They're very talented teams, and they come in and they say, "Yep, when you ask us what our culture is like, they can tell you what it's like. We listen. We treat each other with respect." And again, having that documented really, really helps. Do you want to add to anything?
I don't know the answer about time either, but it's not like 2 weeks. It's more like 6 months to a year. So it's a great question because I think it underscores you want to invest in finding kind of an inclusive team, in getting to know your team members because it'll reap the benefits 6 months to a year from now. It's more along that axis than the 2-week axis. And as Whitney was saying to your second question about how the transitory nature of teams can affect the levels of inclusivity, you're certainly right. So what we try to encourage with collaboration planning is it's another way to onboard new members, right? So if a new member comes on, you have this document that shows this is how our team operates. And it's not as if you just carbon copy and show them the document, but you discuss the document with them and see what changes they would want to make or what their perspective, how that might adapt the team, right? But it's the idea that you have that open discussion and solicit everyone's opinions. Yeah, but those are great questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and when we do collaboration planning, it's often with brand new teams. We usually get pilot teams, but here's the nature of teams. It's not like you're all sitting here and you all probably work on a team. So it's not like we're gonna start over from scratch and we're gonna just do everything anew. So it's taking those, that's part of why we ask you questions. What's one thing you can do to promote psychological safety? What's one thing that you can do to promote inclusion? It's taking those small steps and making those shifts so that you can ultimately move in the right direction. Hang on, I have to log back in to see. Okay. Let's see what some other questions we've had. So here's a question. Is there research evidence that shows DEI initiatives such as this one have statistically significant impact on team inclusivity?
So, sorry, what's the question?
Is there research evidence that shows DEI initiatives such as this one have a statistically significant impact on team inclusivity? Are you aware of any?
Is like the DEI initiative like diversity, the diversity forum itself? If that's the question, I don't know. It's a great question. We actually at ICTR are kind of conducting our own DEIA study of sorts. We had this 5-part session called Enhancing ICTR Climate and Culture, and we've had everyone at ICTR take a survey prior to the 5 sessions. We're going to do a follow-up survey after they conclude, and then 6 months later, because we're precisely interested in this question of can DEIA initiatives kind of move the needle. I'm sure there are studies out there. I don't know a lot about them. I don't know of them off the top of my head, but I think the impulse of the question is exactly how we should be thinking. We all care about these issues, but the science of team science would argue we need the evidence to bolster our points. And so asking the question is the right approach.
Yeah. And it's interesting, this is sort of tangential to the question, but I read an article recently. What we know is that the science of team science helps teams, there's evidence that it helps teams function more effectively. Yeah. It helps them communicate better, they're more psychologically safe. And Hannah Love and her colleagues from Colorado just did a study where they were looking for gender differences on teams. And they did a whole bunch of different measures. They did surveys, they did participant observations, and they were looking for differences in the stereotypical ways that men and women often are different on teams. Are women more in service roles? Do men talk more? All these different things. I'm skirting over it for the sake of time. And what was fascinating is that when they looked at their teams, they found that there were no differences, even where they expected differences based on previous studies in the literature. Now, I will completely concede that this is speculation on their part, but their thought was that most of these teams are part of their pilot program. They have a lot of team science training. There's all kinds of collaboration planning, charter creation, communication training, and they're speculating that they believe that part of those differences that they expected didn't manifest because of the good team practices that were being put into place. People were communicating effectively, teams were psychologically safe. So we don't know whether, we personally don't have the data on the DEI initiatives, but we do have data, and there is research to support that collaborating well, strategically, does in fact improve inclusivity and psychological safety. You have a question.
Shifting a little bit from the inclusive workplace to here we are at UW Madison with some 50,000 plus students who are in the course of a semester, not 2 weeks, not 6 months, but in the course of a semester trying to do group projects together, come up with things where they're trying to work together, learn together. Yeah. Got any tips for shortcutting that 6-month period?
Ooh.
Okay, having been an instructor, I think, I don't have the silver bullet here, but I think trying to be clear and transparent with the students about why you're doing this and really sharing with them, look, I'm having you, don't give them a group project unless there's a reason for them to have the group project. So if you really want them to collaborate and learn from each other, then make that clear in your instructions. And having said that, I realize there's no panacea. I even have a college-age daughter who tells me how much she loathes group projects, so I get it. But the clearer you are...
That was loathe, not love?
It was loathe. She's also somewhat introverted, but nonetheless. So I get it. Students don't always love it, because here's the thing. If you go back to that cognitive diversity graph, it's hard. You're put in a room full of 50,000 students. You don't know all the students, and now you're supposed to learn from each other, and some of them don't do all their work. So again, I think the more transparent you can be about why you're doing it, accountability, I think, is helpful. I think some of those projects, both when I was an instructor and hearing from other students, ways to rate other people's participation can be helpful. Again, psychological safety isn't so much about being nice. It's about holding everybody to exactly the same rules. So I don't know if that's going to save your class, but those are the suggestions that I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are lovely suggestions. I mean, I'm actually like a convert to the beauty of teams. Like, my PhD is in history. I was an independent scholar for a lot of my life. And it's only in the past 5 years or so that I've been able to work on teams, and I've just really enjoyed them. And I feel like what I've missed from my instructors was an explanation about what can you get from teams. And as Whitney said, like, transparency in the value of working with teams. And I think my frustration was always, there weren't clear standards, my teammates weren't held to the same standards, so I felt like I had to do all of the work. But I think I had to reframe my conception of what a team could do for me, and that's what I've done in the last 5 years. So I love working on a team, because I love that it's not all about just me and my ego, right? When I was trying to be a history professor, it was all about what independently I could do, and I don't like that. But now that I'm on a team, it's like, what can we build together? You know, let's do this presentation together. And Whitney and I collaborate on so much, and I love it. It's just a really fun way to work. And I think it's in part because nobody ever kind of sat down with the science of team science for me and kind of spelled out what type of innovation can happen when you can build on the cognitive diversity of a team. It's a great question.
This is a slightly different question, but there's one in the list about how we might use the survey measure of psychological safety tool with our teams. That's a fabulous question. And I can say there's a number of different ways you can use it. One is, if you actually go to Amy Edmondson's website, you can log in and create an account, and she's collecting data. So if you want to go that way, you don't have to go that way. But even using it to get a pulse on your team to see how things are going. Now, some of you might already be seeing some of the alarm bells. I think that if you're going to measure things like psychological safety, creating a way to do it anonymously is helpful. I actually used, I think I used this measure with a group of summer undergraduates. I helped them create sort of an internship program based on previous work that I did, and we assessed different measures in terms of team science, and one of them was psychological safety. And so I think there were maybe 12 to 15 students, and we measured psychological safety at the beginning, we measured it at the middle of the 10 weeks, and we measured it at the end. It was completely anonymous to them. I think I may have been able to see who said what, but it was completely confidential, so I was the mediator, and I shared with them the results of the different pieces. Generally speaking, it was a high-functioning group. They all seemed to get along, and so there weren't really any controversies. But you could use it if some red flag came up. A different thing came up for them, which was they noticed they had a bunch of sub-teams, and they weren't communicating well. So different measure, but same idea. And I shared that with them, and then they came up with some strategic ways to make sure that each of the sub-team communicated more effectively. So if you noticed, I don't have it in front of me, sorry, if you noticed that people felt like they were afraid to speak up, then you could strategically talk to the team. Okay, I'm noticing that people are afraid to speak up. Can we talk about what's happening? What's inhibiting you from speaking up? You could have one-on-one meetings. So those are some of the ways in which you could use that survey to sort of take a pulse on the psychological safety on your team.
Yeah, and I would just add, maybe to underscore some of Whitney's points, one thing that came through in Whitney's answer was she acted as a neutral third party, right, in administering that measure of psychological safety. That can be one approach that can be helpful with teams. But the other thing Whitney emphasized is you're not just doing it once. There's a follow-up, right? And then there's a follow-up 6 months later. And that's important, so it's not, one thing we emphasize with teams is you want to build kind of cultures of constant learning, right? And in part, you do that by not always talking about the nuts and bolts of the work itself, but you actually step up from like an eagle eyes view and think about how is our team operating. So we encourage teams in their kind of monthly team meetings, weekly team meetings, to not just talk about the work, but to talk about how the team is working together. Did we accomplish everything we wanted to? How did it feel working on this team in the past few months, right? Are we feeling supportive? Can we help Ken, come to work or something? I don't know. But like the idea is that you embed teamwork questions on top of the kind of standard task work questions that we're inundated with in our one-on-ones or our team meetings.
Yeah. And then there's another question here that's asking, can you talk about the role of intercultural humility in advancing psychological safety? Psych safety may look differently depending on our social cultures. And I think that's absolutely true. You saw that my interaction with my Chinese friend, I was trying to be nice and offer help, but that went awry. And I think what I would say to that question is that's part of the leading below the surface, that's getting to know people, having those conversations. Absolutely, there's going to be cultural differences, and we have to uncover those and try to make it so that everybody can be comfortable. There was a podcast, I've forgotten what it is, that I heard about, but it was a woman from Amsterdam, I think. It was about emotions, and I'm huge on gratitude. I love to say thank you. I love to acknowledge people for what they do, and that's not like that's a bad thing, but I think she was saying that in the Netherlands, they thank people differently, or at least where she was from in the Netherlands, and that sometimes thanking people too much is actually sort of insulting to them. And so again, having those conversations, so like, yeah, I'm an effusive, thank you so much, but if somebody were to tell me, hey, I'm uncomfortable with that, then I absolutely would sit there and think about it and maybe work with them to come up with a way so that we could all engage in a safe way. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
That was great.
Okay. I think those are most of the questions in the chat. Does anybody have?
Maybe one more there, standing.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, it's me again. Hi.
No, it's good, please.
This is really great. Thank you very much. A really sort of specific, could be a very dumb question.
No.
Regarding psychological safety, a lot of us have moved to remote work.
Yeah.
Right? And in Zoom meetings, a lot of people have their cameras off, with you see their name and things like that. Is there an effect of that on psychological safety?
Totally. Yes, there has to be, right? Because our cameras, our faces convey so much emotion, and also just remote work, what that has meant for psychological safety. It's a super big question that is being studied right now.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I waited till the end.
yeah, no, I love it. Because I mentioned I'm kind of starting this trust study, right? And one of the questions I want to ask is about the nature of remote work and how that affects your ability to trust the leaders of your team, right? If you never interact face-to-face with your leader, that leader surely has to do different things in order to gain your trust, right? And I'm sure we all have kind of personal experiences about how our experiences with trusting our superiors or our team members, or even feeling like we're a part of psychologically safe teams, how that was affected by the pandemic and the nature of remote work. So I think if you believe in these concepts, it's maybe a missing plot hole in our talk, but it's super important because it's an additional kind of challenge that we're confronted with, because it's not just remote, but it's like this hybrid world, right? When Whitney's in the office, well, she's actually in the office every day, but I'm rarely in the office. I work remotely pretty much all the time, and then when people are to develop a team culture and an institutional culture, it's really tough if there's no set schedule. So yeah, it's a great question.
And we recommend if for at least the sessions that we host, we recommend that people turn their cameras on with a sensitivity that we give people the freedom to take care of themselves. I know I'm one of those people that I literally can't stare at the camera all day, so I need to occasionally take camera breaks. We give people go ahead, have it on most of the time, but if you need to turn it off and take a break, please feel free to do so. The other thing is to give yourself an opportunity to get to know your team members if you work primarily remote, whether it's simple check-ins, like you could do Brene Brown's 2-word check-in. How are you showing up? Frustrated and tired. Okay, now you know how everybody feels on the team. Or you can, we used to do this when the pandemic started. I was the assistant director for the Data Science Institute, and we were a brand new institute, and so we would just do random check-ins. I would ask them what books they're reading. Then some people said, well, I don't really read. I said, what TV do you watch? Then other people said, I don't watch TV. So then I came up with other questions. And I ultimately said, what kind of check-ins do you like to have? And here we can laugh about it, but what it did was, and what it did was it gave us an opportunity to get to know each other on a level besides, did you do that work, that whole teamwork pulse. So however you build it in, you don't, to do team building, it doesn't have to be momentous, it doesn't have to be happy hour, it doesn't have to be lunch, although food sometimes helps. But it's those small opportunities to get to know your team members, whether you're in person or not. Hey, what did you do yesterday? I'd love to hear about it. Those small steps. So, yes, sorry, I got
I
excited.
think we're a little over, so just.
Oh, are we? Sorry, okay.
Yeah.
I like to talk.
No, thank you so much. This has been so enjoyable and
Yeah, thank you.
rewarding for us.
We really value, you've had a long day of sessions, and for you to stay here and contribute and be such a wonderful audience, that really means a lot, so thank you.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us at ICTR. I'm on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, we're always happy to engage. So thank you.